This is a quote from Stephen Pressfield's book, Gates of Fire. A king does not abide within his tent while his men bleed and die upon the field. A king does not dine while his men go hungry, nor sleep when they stand out at watch upon the wall. A king does not command his men's loyalty through fear, nor purchase it with gold. He earns their love by the sweat on his back and the pain he endures for their sake. The king is the first to lift the hardest burden, and the last to set it down. A king does not require service of those he leads, but he provides it to them. A king does not expend his substance to enslave men, but by his conduct and example makes them free. Stephen Pressfield's Gates of Fire. I love this quote for a lot of reasons, but I think it perfectly captures what effective leadership looks like modern day. Okay, so let's break it down for a second just to kind of get into it. King does not abide within his tent while his men bleed and die upon the field. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's as straightforward as it gets, in terms of leadership. You're not going to sit back and sit on your throne while everyone else is doing the work.
That's right.
And I think that's like, not to bring it back to like corporate America and like working America. I think that's where, in general, Army, America, sports, we're lacking. Is we there's none of this lead by example anymore. I think it's significantly lacking.
That's right. I want to say, I can't remember where this quote came from, but I want to say I thought I read it in one of Admiral Bill McRaven's books, where basically a shepherd should smell like his sheep. And the idea is, if your men are out there on the front lines, you should be there with them. And take that metaphor however you will. But you need to be there with them. You need to be picking up the same burdens, if not the heavier burdens that they're picking up. You need to be right there with them, communicating with them, understanding what's going on the front lines. But more importantly, if they're not comfortable, they're in their tents, they're cold, or let's just say they're not even in their tents. They're in their holes, they're shivering, they're going through the elements. You should be there right there with them. Why? Because you're going to earn their respect, because you're going to gather that intel. You're going to know what's going on in their minds. You're going to get their perspective on things. You might develop some better strategies. It's just all things pointing to, you shouldn't be in the comfort of your own home while they're out there suffering. You should be out there suffering with them, because you're going to gain their respect and you're going to gain an upper advantage. You're going to have the strategic picture better if you're right there with them.
For sure.
So I just thought that's a brilliant quote. And a lot of this is leading by example, like you talked about. Yep.
One of the stories that this always pops to mind when people talk about leading with example. Back in 2018, we were doing a training event in Fort Hood, Texas, and anyone who sees this that was attached to this training event is going to know exactly what I'm talking about. We were doing a live fire, and we just didn't train how we should have. Like when I got to Fort Bragg in the 82nd, we trained the standard, not necessarily the time, but we utilized the time we did have on the ranges, maximum utilization. So we got maximum training out of it. But we were light airborne infantry. So like we were used to like roughing and toughing it in the 82nd. Like if it rains, tough shit, like you're just going to stay outside, right? Fort Hood, we didn't really do that. We were in like vehicles, but it was also Texas. So if it rained, it's still like 70, 65 degrees. Well, one night we're in the thick of this field problem in Texas, and dude, it's like 75 degrees, between 75 and 65 when we go to bed. We woke up and it was like 30, 35, 40 degrees, and it is pissing rain. And we have a whole week, right? And no one was prepared for this. And we are sitting here doing this live fire day in, night iterations. The company is doing it. Everyone's rotating through as squads. Dude, our command team was shacked up in a hard structure freaking building. The PLs, company commanders, first sergeant, I get it. They had to have their laptops. They had to be checking their email, battalion command teams coming out, but, and they walked majority of the lanes. Like they were on out my lane, like every time we went, but like, that was an example where I remember looking back and being like, man, it's really hard to sit and take any direction from you. And like, I remember this is the best platoon sergeant, one of the best platoon sergeants I've ever had. He came from the 75th Ranger Regiment. He was an airborne dude his entire career. Not that that matters, but he walked every single lane that was in his platoon, and he slept outside with us. Like he was sitting outside with us, like, and there was some more stuff that happened where he like legitimately put his career at like jeopardy. He's like, start a fire. He's like, and that's like a huge no. Like you just can't do that. And I don't know how, you know, they didn't find out, but it kept us warm for a week because I saw how mad he was with the situation. And I think he saw too how this is directly going to affect the morale and the buy-in from everyone. Because we're sitting out there sleeping in the rain, getting flooded out every other freaking couple hours. And then the command team's telling us to sleep in the rain while they're sleeping in a hard structure. And I think that just goes back to like, you know, exactly the quote that we're talking about. And I think it goes back to like the old saying, not really a saying, but it doesn't matter how high you get, you should still remember where you came from. If you're going to put yourself in a position to lead men and women, then you damn well better put yourself, that comes with a price. Like if you pray for rain, you got to deal with the mud. So like if you're going to lead a company full of infantrymen, well, you better put your sleeping bag in the puddle next to him. You know, yeah, it's just, I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, there's no separation, you know, and no physical separation. And I think that especially if you're about to ask them to do something that is going to earn some, or is going to spend some leadership capital, let's just call it that. Like, hey, I'm about to ask these guys to do something really, really hard. You think it's going to be easier from the guy that's with them, who knows exactly what they're going through and is experiencing the same elements that they're experiencing, versus the guy who has just been comfortable the entire time, you know, 100 miles away in his, you know, in the command center. I think it's going to come with a lot more weight, and the guys are going to be more willing to do that if you're out there with them. So,
oh, dude, that was the thing. Like our PL at the time, like he was walking around in like, he was out there with us all night, did every single iteration. Platoon sergeant did, every squad leader did, all the team leaders did. And I was young, but we would go back into the command suite for doing an AAR, so an after actions report. And they had like, it was a hard structure, but there was like a doorway that was separated from like where they had their laptops set up. And I remember looking in there and like, I saw a freaking cot. And I was like, dude, like, I just remember being so pissed off. And then I got to the 82nd, like a year later, and like, I'm looking at my commander and he's digging a freaking hole next to me. My platoon sergeant's doing a sector sketch in the center of the patrol base next to me. It's raining and they're not going anywhere. And I'm like, that's, you know, you immediately get that little buy-in when they see that. And I just remember looking at Fort Hood when I saw a cot and I was like, are you serious right now? You know, so.
Yeah. And there's probably a lot of ways we can connect this back with football as an example, but I think one of the things that I think about all the time, I think this was a few years back, but it was like Dan Campbell's second season. It may have been his first season, but I want to say in Hard Knocks, you can see this. But at one point when they're doing like up downs, something like that. This may have been like the end of practice, like a conditioning type thing, kind of bring the team up and get a little, you know, smoke them a little bit. Dan Campbell's out there with them doing up downs. Now, Dan Campbell's an animal already, but it's that point of saying, listen, I still have to earn their respect every single day. No matter how much success I have, I still have to earn their respect. And why do you want that respect? Because that's your leadership capital. Because leaders know that at some point you're going to have to cash in that capital and make these guys do something that they're generally not going to want to do. But your words are going to have more value. They're going to be more influenced to do that if you've taken the time to earn their respect. Put that damn cot away. Be in the same situation they're in. because those men, that means a lot to them, to those men and women.
Oh, dude, it does, man. Like that season I know you're talking about, he does something like that. He's doing up downs with a bunch of football players, millionaires, right? But he's also making them go full pads contact.
100%.
And that they talk about that. There's a few, and I think there might be a few interviews out there where he's like, that's spending that leadership capital. Like,
right.
You just got traded here from a, whatever market, large market, small market, wherever you're coming from, you just got traded to the Detroit Lions, and all of a sudden you're going full contact multiple times a day, like it's high school again, and no one wants to do that.
And every time he kind of prefaced it with saying, guys, I'm going to make you do some things you're not going to want to do.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard, but this is the culture I'm trying to embrace right now. This is the culture that I'm trying to push forward. I want us to be blue collar. Yeah.
It makes you good. It makes you a really hard team to beat when there's no coddling and you're doing hard stuff.
100%.
Every single, you know what I mean? Like every single day you're you're doing things in August that most teams aren't doing.
Exactly.
Why?
Exactly.
That stuff's really important.
So that was kind of more on the hardcore end, which was again, Stephen Pressfield's Gates of Fire. Definitely check it out. There's a lot of great stuff in there. All right, I'm going to switch it up just on a more lighter side, humorous side. I'm going to give another example for us to just unpack here for a second. Do you remember, I guess this came out like 92 or 93, but the original Goofy movie?
I don't remember it now.
Okay. All right. That's okay. So it's snowing yesterday. I'm watching this with my kids and just, having some nostalgia, because I think the last time I saw this, I was probably like 5 years old, something like that. Anyway, this is single-handedly, I think, the most undervalued from a leadership perspective. This movie is a fantastic leadership training. And let me just kind of break it down for a second. So Disney's The Goofy movie. It is about it's a animated cartoon about a clumsy dad and his embarrassed teenager. And really what Goofy wants out of this whole thing. Okay, so Max does this awesome, in my opinion, stunt at his high school, trying to impress this girl, okay, Francine. And Goofy catches wind of it from the president. The president calls Max into his office, and then the president calls Principal calls Goofy and is like, hey, here's the deal, Goof. You got to start raising your son better, or else he's going to end up in the electric chair. A little exaggerated, but anyway, so Goof's like, okay, I got this idea. I'm going to take him on this fishing trip. It's something me and my dad used to do. And by the way, where they're going to go fishing is Lake Destiny. We're talking thousands of miles away. It is a cross-country trip. So before he offers Max this idea, Max and his love interest, now I'm not going to think of it. Dan. Max goes to Roxanne and is like, hey, you going to go to this party? And they eventually kind of get to this point where they're both going to this party. Well, Goof intercepts it when Max gets home, and Goof says, hey, Max, pack your stuff. We're going on this fishing trip. It's going to be a blast. It's what me and my father always used to do. It's going to be great. Of course, Max is like, I hate this idea.
Yeah, right.
I would rather just go to this party. And he's like, no, it's fine. Because Goof in his mind's like, I got to keep this kid out of trouble. Goof's commander's intent at this point is we're going to go on this fishing trip and it's going to be a blast. And that's what he communicates to Max. But really behind his mind is, I got to keep him out of trouble. And I'm going to take him away. We're going to reestablish this relationship and we're going to go across the country. It's going to be a blast. But Max, all he wants to do is be with Roxanne. He gets in this deep lie with Roxanne and says, I can't go to the party because me and my dad are going on this trip and we're going to go see Powerline, who's like the Taylor Swift of the era in Goofy world. We're going to go to his concert in LA and my dad knows him. We're going to get on stage. It's going to be great. She's like, oh, that's so cool. So he completely lied about it. They get on this trip. Anyway, the story goes on. You all got to see it. But one of the things we find out is along this journey, Max is not communicating what he really wants, which is ideally to be at home with Roxanne hanging out. but also this lie that he told Roxanne saying that I need to go to LA. I need to be on stage with Powerline. He doesn't communicate that with Goof. So we have a communication breakdown. Goofy is also not communicating the fact that he's just worried that Max is going to get in trouble and his life's going to be just off the beaten path. At some point during this journey, there's a lot of hilarious stuff that happens along the way. Goofy goes, because Max is hating everything. Everything they do, he hates it. And eventually Goofy says, all right, Max, let's do what you want to do. So they go to a baseball game. They do these other things. And they're hitting it off pretty well. And then at one point, Goofy says, Max, here's the map. I'm going to give you some ownership in the map, which, by the way, I got to give it to him. That's a nice leadership move. If your subordinates are not on board with this plan, give them some stake in it and let them have ownership of it. Hey, for this next thing, you take control. I'm going to give you responsibility. This is your thing. Not a bad little tactic, but Max erases part of the map and draws a line to LA. So they don't go to Lake Destiny. They're going to LA. Okay. But he doesn't tell Goofy that. Anyway, long story short, they don't go to Lake Destiny. They have this big falling out, and they eventually run a car off the cliff into this ravine in this water. And again, there's a lot of details in here, but they finally confess what's going on. Like, Goof knows that he changed the map, and he knows that, and then Max tells him, like, hey, I made up this whole lie that I was going to go to this Powerline concert and I was going to be on stage. I couldn't think of anything else to say because, I didn't want to tell Roxanne I'm spending the whole summer with my dad. We're going on this fishing trip. He's embarrassed about the whole thing. But then it was almost like Goofy goes, all right, you want to get on stage? I'm going to make it happen. Okay. And the rest, and I don't want to give the ending away because it's pretty awesome. So I wanted to bring that up for a couple reasons, because I think that this happens a lot in leadership where leader comes up with this plan. They got this intent. They want to do, this is what they want to do for their team. And honestly, nobody likes this plan. Nobody understands it. And it doesn't align with what they want to do. So they're like, the hell if I'm going to go the extra mile for this guy, because to me, it doesn't make sense. Right.
Right.
Max doesn't want to go fishing in Lake Destiny. He wants to be over here with Roxanne. He wants to hang out. If Goofy had just understood that, communicated his intent, said, hey, you know what, Max, I want to do this. Let's go to this cross country thing because I'm worried you're going down the beaten path and I want to keep you out of trouble. And then all Max had to do was, hey, I hear you, Dad, but honestly, here's what I want to do. I want to go to this concert in LA. I bet you if he had known what was really on his mind, he would have said, okay, guess what? We can do both. And I can achieve my commander's intent because us taking this cross-country trip to LA is going to keep you out of trouble, right? Now we're achieving the commander's intent, and I'm doing it in a way that achieves his higher purpose goals as well. So I guess work with me here, but leaders need to understand what the higher purpose goals are of their subordinates, right? Their report tos. If they understand what's most important to them, then they can still achieve their goals, their commander's intent or their coach's intent, by showing how it connects. And that way it's like, hey, no problem. We don't have to do Lake Destiny. We'll go to the concert in LA and we'll spend all summer doing that. I can't guarantee we're going to get on stage and do the whole thing, but we're at least going to do that. It'll be fun. You'll enjoy it. This is aligned with your purpose goals. And at the same time, it's accomplishing my goal of keeping you out of trouble. So I just thought that was brilliant, man. Like, I know that wasn't Disney's full intent, but it's like, okay.
But yeah, I think there's a lot to take from it, especially like, when above gives you the overview and the scope of what they want to accomplish. And how do you like, there's multiple, there's 100 ways to skin a cat, and then you can, accomplish whatever you need to accomplish while also trying your best to support everyone's goals that's involved in the team, and I think that's might not apply everywhere, but like on a football team, I think that's, very, it applies strongly. I think definitely in the military. I mean, that's really all you do. You have like a scope and a mission set of what you're going to do. And then, you can either come up with a plan on your own, or you can involve every single person in the plan.
Yeah.
I do think too with that, like the most cohesive teams and like, squads that I've been a part of have always brought everyone in and have kind of implemented like, hey, how do you think we should go about this? And I think the worst squads I've been a part of or platoons in that matter have always been squad leaders and above make the plan and then they just go with it. And I don't think that is right, especially when you have competent team leaders and competent guys in your platoon that can add value to accomplishing what you need to accomplish.
Yeah, it starts with communication. I mean,
right. It's all communication based,
Yeah. Like this whole thing, again, it's a silly scenario, but the same thing, it happens all the time. And I think if the leader communicates what he's trying to do early and often and gives his subordinates a chance to kind of weigh in. I'm not saying that these subordinates are going to make the decision. Ultimately, it's going to be the coach's decision on where we're going with things. But I think it would value the coach to say, hey, I got this plan. Let me run this by you. Let me think. And ask the questions, get to know his players well enough so that he knows what their purpose is, because it's going to change, right? Because every player in the NFL, every player in college, players in college want to go to the NFL. We know that. That's your higher purpose goal. Okay, guess what? I got this plan that's going to help you get there. I got this plan that's going to help showcase your talent. I need you to go on with me on this one because I'm going to ask you to do some things that aren't going to be the most fun all the time. We're going to go full pads a little bit more than we usually do. However, if our goals are aligned here, you're going to get what you want and I'm going to get what I want for this team. That's kind of the idea. It's kind of like,
and I think, I think that's like lacking a lot, especially in from coaches perspective. I only coached 1 year, but like viewing it, I think in order to kind of ignite some of the kids, have them involved in part of the planning process.
Absolutely.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Now, I'm not going to tell you to have them involved when it comes to managing a game and, whatever is on your script for 1st and 10, 1st and 5, 2nd and long, 2nd and short. Like but like, there's nothing wrong with him having involved. I think you see at the most successful organizations, I think that at least the quarterback is so involved with the head coach and the quarterback coach that I think that you see teams like that kind of flourish.
Yeah, it's almost like as long as there's a lot of different ways to get there, but there needs to be alignment. I think that's the key. And this has to be an early conversation, right now, even if it's in the off season, as early as you can possibly make it. And over communicating is not ever a problem. But just making sure that there's alignment. And at the end of the day, player knows coach is going to make the decision at the end of the day. And that's something we have to respect as players. Okay. If you have a problem with that, then you have a whole nother problem. That's a character problem. You have to understand coach is going to make the call. But doesn't mean that you don't have a say. You don't have a say in the strategy. The coach wants buy-in from the players. And how you're going to get buy-in is if you're listening to the players, that they feel like they have some ownership stake in this team and some ownership stake in the decisions so that they can weigh in, provide feedback, whatnot. But at the end of the day, as long as there's alignment, then they're both aligned on that purpose, I think that's where you're going to head off in things. And that's the start of a winning culture. Now, I want to quickly turn to, because I really want to talk about the Hoosiers today. And Indiana Hoosiers, coming off of a championship win, an incredible season. Before we get into them, I want to bring up another book that everybody needs to read. This is James Kerr's Legacy. And this book is about, if you've ever heard of them, the All Blacks. They are a rugby team in New Zealand. Okay. Now, I'm going to read a couple things from this book that you're going to start seeing some similarities from what I know about the Hoosiers versus the All Blacks, both winning cultures. Now, just as to paint a picture, and I don't have all the stats in front of me, but the All Blacks are one of the most successful rugby teams of all time. If you look on their stat sheet, they're blowing teams away. I'm not saying they win every single game. I think they're ranked like second right now based on projections and whatnot, but they're a commanding force. They're a winning culture. They're winning. They're expected to win almost every single game. So a couple things that I wanted to point out here is when it comes to the culture that they've created. Now, this didn't happen overnight. This took years. It took bringing on the right players. One of the things that they preach about is personal discipline. Okay. They have this concept called sweep the sheds. And this is something that I introduced to a lot of the high school teams that I work with. It's the idea is you leave a place in better shape than where you found it. So as an example, okay, we're in the off season right now, a lot of off season workouts going on. When you enter the weight room, that place should look spotless. And when you leave the weight room, it should look spotless. So what does that mean? Okay, after the workout's done, you sweep the sheds. It just means you clean up after yourself. You're picking up little things so that the janitor staff doesn't have to do that for you. That is just a little example. Personal discipline. And the whole idea for that is if you're disciplined in life, then you're going to be more disciplined on the field. It's training a mindset. It's establishing a culture that says, look, we may not have the most talent on paper compared to the other teams in the league, but we will be the most disciplined. So you can take that into costly penalties, those sorts of things, making sure that you have a discipline of mind. So another thing is, let's see if I have it marked down here. It's who they brought in to the team. They selected character over talent every single time.
I think in my opinion, I think that especially in today's sports culture, I think that's the most important thing. If you want a winning organization, I think it's the mindset and the individual you bring in over the talent level. And you see that with the Hoosiers, not to jump the gun.
You're fine. Yeah.
Like 22 guys came from JMU. They didn't have 1 5-star on their roster, and they beat teams like Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State that have 5-star, wideouts, running backs, offensive linemen. They beat them, and they beat some of them really bad and embarrassed them. And I think that goes to show you, like, you don't need this elite level of talent that is going to, you need people with solid character, integrity, and buy-in. And I think that's going to go so much further, especially in today's college sport, like NIL, transfer portal. I think that's going to go so much further than anything else.
It's something they did. Every college coach, every high school coach, every pro coach needs to be thinking about. It's how much they value the character. It's not so much what's on tape, but what's happening in that interview. For example, when you talk to teachers, Cignetti even mentioned quite a few times that, obviously one of the things he preached about was the recruiting strategy as soon as he got to Indiana. He's like, the recruiting is something we really need to focus on. When I go to a school, I want to talk to counselors. I want to talk to their friends. I want to see their attendance record. Like, what do you think he's going for? Like, what he's looking for are character traits. Like, he didn't once ask about ability.
Yeah. And I think that's something, like, I've never, obviously never recruited college athletes, but, like, I think that's something that is kind of overlooked, often when you're looking at, I think that's it's a better strategy, because he's obviously there because he's talented enough. He's not visiting, what I mean? It's like on a plane, especially as a head coach, they're not doing that because they want to feel good about themselves. You're talented enough to play here. We want to see who you are as a person.
Exactly.
And I think that's very important.
So the All Blacks said, so we picked high work rate, strong body movers, guys that were unselfish and had a sacrificial mindset. So that, to me, is, again, it's our values decide our character decides our value. It was something they preached about. So they selected on character. Guys that were unselfish and had a sacrificial mindset. I mean, that 100% beats talent. And the reason is because if they don't have a sacrificial mindset, if they aren't coming with humility, then you're going to have an ego problem, right? So no matter what you're talking about and again, it kind of goes back to commander's intent, coaches, and let's just call it coach's intent.
Yeah.
Okay, this year, I want to make the playoffs. We're going to do everything we can. We have to win, okay? And in order to do that, we're going to go full pads. When we normally would do shells, or we would normally just do helmets, whatever the case may be, we're going to go full pads all week. What's going to happen with the ego player versus the sacrificial mindset, the unselfish player? Unselfish player is going to be like, you got it. Just let me know what time I need to be there, coach. Ego player, oh, when I was at Alabama, we didn't do this, and we didn't do this. What point is, I don't need to do all this stuff, man. This talent is God-given. What do I need to do full pads for, coach? You tell me. And now, when you could be advancing, you could be improving your team. Next practice, boom, put in the scheme. Let's get things moving. Now you're having to take time, explain to this guy time and time again why this connects to his higher purpose. Again, selecting on character versus talent.
Yeah, going back to what we were talking about earlier, I think it really puts your team in position you may not be unbeatable, but you're going to be really hard to beat. That sucks, especially when you have a team that is maybe better, right? And you're on the path. Like that team that was going full pads in, July and August, whatever the case may be, they're on your schedule, or you're going to have to play them. You will have to see them. And that if you put yourself in a position to be a really hard team to beat, I mean, that's a really good position to be in. Right. And I think that goes, back to the Hoosiers, this year, I think they really, 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 with the character that the athletes had on their team, and the coaching staff, I think they put themselves in a position to be a really difficult team to beat. I like looking at the Ohio State game more than really the Miami game, the Oregon game, Alabama. The Ohio State game to me is most important because Ohio State, I thought, was going to win the national championship from week one.
A lot of people. Yep.
And when you look at like their defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, who's has, I think, 3 rings with Belichick.
Right.
And now he's coaching a bunch of, and Ohio State's defense was unbelievable this year. And, Indiana beat them by 3 points, and that was the toughest game they really had throughout the entire journey of the playoffs. And I know that was a Big Ten championship, but it went to show you how well coached they were and how much character they had, because they didn't break at all. Fundamentals were there the whole game, so.
And so it's the attitude to recruit for, because at the end of the day, it's like, yes, obviously it'd be great to have 5-star recruits filling out your roster, getting these guys over in the transfer portal that are great. But at the same time, it's if they're not going to mesh with this culture you're trying to enforce, one like Cignetti's bringing in here where, again, they're recruiting for traits, not stars. They want toughness, football IQ, dependability mattered more than rankings. I think he was the one that always talked about, I want production over potential, because a lot of these.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think he's kind of changed the trajectory of where recruiting is going to go in college sports?
I think absolutely. I think it's changing every single year.
I think it changes every year, but I think you have to, right?
You got to think about, I think without a doubt, college coaches are looking at what Cignetti's doing right now and his approach to this last season. And they're completely reshaping their model, or they're certainly making some adjustments, because it's almost kind of like,
dude,
the first one through is going to get the bloodiest, right? But then everybody's going to want to mold it after that. Now, the problem is it all sounds great on paper. What we're talking about and what Cignetti's, what he was able to do is not easy to do. I can't speak from experience in my opinion, but just based on my opinion, it's, you're establishing a brand new identity. And this is very hard, I think, especially if you've been a coach at a school for a while and they're used to you being a certain way. And now all of a sudden,
that's what I was going to say. You got to start out on a clean slate almost.
And that's,
I always say this. And two things, if I'm an athlete, this is the most unstable time to enter the transfer portal, in my opinion. because now like you're looking at like, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these schools start recruiting out of, I mean, they already have, but like, you know, recruiting out of D2, D1 AA, JMUs, like the smaller conferences that aren't Power 5. Because I mean, he just won a national championship with 22 people from JMU. So he's showing you he's recruiting off character and it's working, and guys already know his system and it's working. So development's there. The character traits are there. And two, like, I mean, I forget the second point that I was going to talk about, but I don't know if I'd be an athlete and just go run to the portal if I'm unhappy now, because you may not get picked up.
Or again, you're going to be thrown in. Grass ain't always greener on the other side, right?
Yeah,
like,
dude. Yeah.
And I've always, the portal will tell a lot about a player too. And recruiting, when you're, you know, talking about how much money you're offering these players now, that's going to show a lot about. I've been seeing a lot of random TikToks meant to be funny. They're meant to be funny, but I guarantee this stuff is happening where guys are wearing different hats. They're wearing their Alabama hat. Well, what are you offering me? This? Okay, sure. But then all of a sudden a call comes in and 7 points. These guys aren't even considering the culture that they're going into, or the depth, where they're going to be on the depth chart, or I mean, it just this transfer portal process is going to expose a lot about the player. And I think that good coaches like Cignetti they're not going to be looking for the things that you would normally think about. Like it's more than what's on the tape. And so, yeah, going back to your point about like, what does this change the scope of everything? I think you have a very difficult job if you've been on a team for, you know, let's just call it 5 years, 3 to 5 years, something like that. You cannot just assume you're going to reinvent the wheel overnight. You have a stake in this team. I'm sure the best way to describe this is you have a certain amount of leadership capital right now based on your reputation, because you have a reputation at this point. Your players know who you are.
Yeah.
I may be good or may be bad. So you still need to be authentic. In my opinion, I think it would be the best thing for a coach to do, especially if you want to reinvent and say, hey, because like, again, going back real quickly to the All Blacks, one of the things that they would say is they eliminated players seen as hindering the chance for a positive change. I think Cignetti even said there was quite a number of players entering the portal after our first year, or I think after the transition year when he came in 2024, that he was happy to let go. He's like, good, because if you don't believe in what we're doing here, you shouldn't be.
And I think that's part of like, I can see the portal from both sides, and that's one side where like on the coaching side, and they can, you know, more so like the consumer of like, yeah, if you don't want to be at a school, then leave. Like, why would I, if I'm a coach, why would I want a kid? I'm not going to beg you to stay, man. Like, go into the portal, go
for it. Have fun.
From an athlete side, you know, I am kind of grateful for the athletes that commit to your Ole Misses and your Alabamas and your Oregons that like they offered you, but like if you would have committed to an ECU or like I bring up JMU because it's a good football school, JMU, or like a smaller school, not as in a big market, not Power 5, and you would be playing and you would be getting like true development.
Right.
That's why I appreciate the portal. But like from a coach's perspective, I would not want a kid on my team that doesn't want to be there. And I also too, I don't know if I would like, I get confused when I see some of these coaches recruiting a guy that's transferred 3 times. I'm like, dude, why? Like, I just don't see how that's beneficial to an organization at all, because you're trying to every coach has the same mission. You want to develop a winning culture and you want to win a national championship, right? You bringing in someone that's bounced around at an organization, it is just, what does that have to offer besides just someone bringing in a skill set that is a temporary fix that's probably going to leave or declare for the draft? And, you know, like if they're that good, declare for the draft. But like, I don't know, like ECU's quarterback, he transferred 4 times.
Yeah.
And like, no, like he's a great athlete. I think he's awesome, but like, I just think that's a lot of times to transfer, man. And that's a lot of chances to.
It's almost like, even if they're happy with where they're at, sometimes I feel like they get this dopamine high of just like, Yeah,
I think,
wouldn't
dude,
mind
yeah,
to try it
like,
another year.
I
Like,
I
let me
think
just try
that's what it
another thing.
is. Like, I get to go into
Yeah.
new school, new environment, new change, and a new
Yeah.
state. And I think that's a lot of what it has to do, because like not every kid's making the Carson Beck transfer paycheck. You know what I mean? Of like the 4 million or whatever he got. Like,
Right.
I just don't think that's realistic for a lot of the kids.
I think they, and here's the thing. I think the players have it figured out. Okay. And if a player wants to do that, understand the risks, because it's just like when you apply for a job, companies are going to look and see how many times you've moved companies. Hey, I've seen for the past 5 years, you've spent 6 months here, 12 months here. Oh, your longest stint was 1.5 years. But
Yeah,
you're
like,
bouncing around.
why would I hire you for a permanent role that we want for a while?
But I think at the end of the day, okay, but that's going to be a healthy portion of this transfer portal. If it was me and I was Cignetti, the first thing I would do is I want to get to know the player. At least let me get a chance to get to know them, because maybe that's not the complete story. And I think you can't write it off as that. I think you're doing yourself and the player a disservice, because it is good. Honestly, in the job market nowadays, there's a lot of people that have been to different jobs and they're bouncing around trying to find the right fit. Let's get to know the player. And honestly, I just want to know if he has that sacrificial mindset, team first, and if he's humble. At the end of the day, maybe he's just been on a lot of crappy cultures, working under coaches that he just didn't respect. Dive into that more. Let's learn more about it. I know what's on the tape. That's why I'm here. Now I want to know, what is your purpose? What are you looking for in a coach?
Yeah.
What are you looking for in a coach?
I think that's I would imagine that's how most coaches are going to go about their recruiting strategy moving forward. At least I would. A guy just won a national championship because of. And I'm also curious to think, like, is there more losing cultures in college sports today than there are winning? No.
Well, the expectations couldn't be higher, and that's one of the things that Cignetti talked about, was that, coming in here, you're expected to win. I don't care if you go to Indiana or Kentucky, or you go to NC State. The expectation is we want to win, and you got to win now.
I think in his situation it worked out great. I mean, he's a hell of a coach. That's obvious, but I think in his situation, Indiana was like the best situation too, because it's like they were the losingest football program in America.
Yeah, everybody wrote them off.
Everyone wrote them off, and he's like, "Okay, do you watch this?" Now they're 27-2 in the last 2 years.
Yeah, 100%. And again, it's not about bringing in the best players; it's about bringing in the right players. And he will say, "Yeah, I want to try and I want to fill my team as best as I possibly can." It may come from the portal if that's the best position. It may be a high schooler right out of high school.
Okay.
And he comes in. Okay, so you fill your team. We talked about the players and how you select players. We want to base it off of character. That's what the All Blacks did. That's what the Hoosiers are doing.
Yeah, hold on, real. Dude, let's go downstairs. All right, I will be done in like 10 minutes. Yeah, it goes outside. Bring it downstairs and put it outside. All right.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
I love that. Trust me, man.
He collects rocks and
Okay.
he brings all the rocks inside, but he like hides them. So like he'll just like put it in his pocket, and then he puts them on his windowsill. So I just find like little rocks, and like then he'll come to me and like he like comes and he's like, "I want to solve a problem." He's like, "This goes outside." I'm like, "Put it out." Yeah. Put it outside, dude.
My two, there are these boulders that are currently on our back porch right now because they found them. And I'm like, great. They're just sitting right there. And I'm like, go for it, man. Yeah, honestly, dude. I'll take that over video games. I'll take it over watching, something on a Prime Video. Like, go for it. Get outside, play with some sticks, play with some rocks.
Yeah.
So anyway, we talked about, filling your team with the best players, position players possible, but it's so important to get to know your players. And that is a skill of leadership too, is acquiring that knowledge. I want to know who I'm working with. I want to know what their purpose is. I want to know what their family's like. I want to know what their background was. What are their players? What are their friends saying about them? Get a picture before you make a decision. Now, once you bring them all here, okay, and looking at Cignetti here, this is the Hoosiers. Install a simple, demanding, execution-driven system. So offense was built on clarity and efficiency, which means fewer plays, more mastery. Players knew exactly what to do and why. We're not looking at anything complicated. This is not a complicated offense or defense, but it's fewer plays because I want them to be masters at it. Now, here's a concept I'm going to throw at you, and I want to hear from your military background. Again, sometimes a simple plan is better than a complex plan. And why is that? It's because with a simple plan, I know you're going to be damn good at that plan. And it's easier to adjust when you have a simple plan. If it's very, very complex and all of a sudden defense throws a scheme at you you're not ready for, it's going to be much more difficult to adjust from that. So fewer plays, more mastery. Defense, I'm sorry. And let me hear your forgive me. But am I crazy on that one?
No, you're not crazy. I mean, that's really, from a conventional, because I was in the 82nd conventional standpoint, I think every single live fire and, practice, so to speak, we did, we were fundamentally like, we had to master the basics. And I think that's kind of, some people would like argue that because every unit says that, but due to the circumstances and how large like a unit we were, and like, our company, we had 140 guys, we really focused on mastering and being really, really, really good at like baseline battle drills, like knockout bunker, enter and clear a trench. Like I think for about 18 months, every single live fire we did was clear a wired obstacle, knock out a bunker, or enter and clear a trench. And that's all we did. It was just so repetitive over and over and over and over again. And I would rather have that with not a whole lot of spice, just like unbelievably good at it, and unbelievably sound at the basics and the fundamentals, than try to have like this complex, like sometimes a plan, when you start adding in all this crazy shit, like it can just get messy. And I think you see that with a lot of football teams. Like you have a lot of teams that you want to add in check downs, you want to add in audibles, you want to add in all these things, but they can't even listen to you on the sideline when when I'm holding up my sign that has 3 or 4 logos on it that tells you the formation, the routes, what it's on, whatever your sign, whatever hand and arm signals for context or circumstance of the conversation, whatever hand and arm signals you're doing, you can't even have the baseline down. How do you expect me to implement an audible? How do you expect 100%. Me to implement like a route change due to the defense lining up? So it's like, I completely agree with that. I think that's across the military. I think that's across any sporting team, like football, basketball, baseball, soccer. Like, I think that's just across the line. Like
simple plan.
A simple plan. And being so good at a simple plan and the basics that when it's time for me to be like, okay, now we're going to throw this in here. Like, I think that's, and you saw that, I think that's the gap that you saw. And they were all, you don't see players that aren't willing to listen.
Absolutely. And one of the things I was thinking about when you're describing, from your experience, it's why is a simple plan good? It's simple plans, for a lot of reasons are the better way to go. But a lot of it is also because, hey, the fog of war is going to strike. And what I mean by that is in the athletic side of things, it's okay, simple plan that you master. Okay, think about that. You become so good at this, you can do it in your sleep. You don't have to overthink. All you need to figure out is, I know exactly what I'm doing. I just need to execute now. You're not thinking, okay, wait a minute. Does that mean I'm doing this? Does that mean I'm doing this? No, because here's the thing, that mental chatter, try doing that in front of 100,000 away fans. You're at another stadium. The weather is crap and you can't hear yourself think. You shouldn't be doing that thinking. It should be mastered.
Yeah,
so that
dude,
no matter what the environment, you're able to execute.
I think that's the biggest, that right there. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You know, you should be able to go into any environment and be able to execute.
Whoever you're playing, doesn't even matter. Yep.
Doesn't matter and be able to do what you're planning to do. And you should be able to communicate on the field. You should be able to communicate with your coaches. You should be able to communicate audibles. Cause like there's nothing worse, and you see it on TV. And this stresses me out as a consumer, like of football, of like when they're trying to run an audible or they're trying to sub because the defense sub, whatever, or the offense subs, so the defense is subbing, and like someone doesn't know where to go. And I'm like, dude, but you'll be the same guy who's like complaining about the plan or complaining about the play calling, going to the media. But I'm like, you don't even know where to go.
Right. And how many times you see that at the pro level?
At the pro level, you see that, you know, Power 5 on like College game day, Saturday to midnight, dude. Like there's always a moment in the game where they're trying to do something like that and someone doesn't know what they're doing. And I'm like, dude, that is the most frustrating thing. I could only imagine being a head coach where like your family is eating based off of your success. And some kid is like, didn't want to pay attention during whatever film, whatever the case may be, wanted to joke around. And now all of a sudden Saturday evening in front of 100,000 people, you got to burn a timeout because you can't run a play that you wanted to run in the scenario and situation that you're in, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And when and I can't help but think about all the noise right now on sports media, especially, again, not to keep beating a dead horse here, but with the Eagles, how many Eagles fans are like, yeah, we need a better offense with more schemes, more moving. What you're adding is complexity with an already frustrated offense. Okay.
Yeah. I think going back to Philly, like we talk about the stats and the play calling. Like I agree that there needed to be a change at the end of the year. I think for anyone calling for Kevin Patullo to be fired mid-year, dude, we weren't making it. If he was fired and Nick Sirianni started calling plays, we were not going to make it past, week 2 of the playoffs, if that, because of the amount of just stuff that has happened throughout the year with the media, the AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts and him not liking each other. So I think Howie Roseman, the GM, he played his cards right by just waiting and then, releasing Kevin Patullo at the end of the year. Also, too, Kevin Patullo didn't really help himself because I saw that he was going to the media too, saying like Philly fans are so hard to please and it's really hard being an offensive coordinator.
Just throwing logs into the fire.
Just stop talking.
Stop talking.
You've coached in Philly before. You know how brutal these fans are going to be, and you're replacing a Super Bowl offensive coordinator.
Right.
Like, dude, the only thing this city wants again is another ring. So if you give them anything short of that, they will be calling for your head, especially when you had Saquon Barkley almost could have broken the all-time rushing record if he chose to, if
they didn't win the Super Bowl, that was about to be a hot-bedded question.
Dude, yes. That was another thing where, like, going back to the All Blacks rugby team, you want to talk about a dude that sacrificed, like, going into the history books. So Saquon Barkley in 2024 could have broken the all-time rushing record. He denies it. And then all the media is like, dude, if they don't win the Super Bowl, he'll regret that for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
That's the level of buy-in you had from that team and Saquon Barkley out of truly believing like, no, if we see the Chiefs, we're going to beat them. There's no team that we're going to play in the NFC in the playoffs that we haven't beaten already. Played the Rams in the season, played Green Bay in the season. Played Washington twice, going back, but like, not to go off topic with, I think, it was a nightmare this year, dude. And there was no replacement for him, and there was, you know, all of the craziness. Like, they didn't help themselves, and it was a dumpster fire, and you're seeing it now. Because I mean, how long did it take us to get an offensive coordinator?
I think it's going to be interesting, and that's going to be that honestly could be our next chat, is about what should Mannion, I can't remember his first name, but this new offensive coordinator coming in, and what do you do now? Okay, so like that, I want to cue that up because that may be a good conversation for next week.
I think it would be
for
great.
any head coach now, because there's so many now filling in. This has been, I want to say this is a record year in terms of how many coaches are filling in. But what does the coach do in his first couple of days? Well, we can chat about that next time. But I will say this much, just to kind of tie it back into purpose-driven leadership. Okay, we talked about once the coach gets in there, develop a simple plan. Okay, I think without a doubt, develop a simple plan, have very high expectations. Mastery is what we're talking about of that simple plan. I think that's a goal. That's a great goal. But in those early days, when you're just getting your feet wet, or if you've been there for a while, whatever the case may be, you got to come back to your purpose. What is my purpose on this team? And what do I want the players to see? What is our collective purpose as a group? Because here we're going to find out, why are we doing this, guys? And once we understand that, then it's easier for us to understand fundamentally all the different things that we need to put in place in order to get there, guys. Like, that's what we need to do. If this is our goal this year, then I'm going to require this, and this, and this is what I'm going to do. I want to know what your expectations are of me, and here are my expectations for you. And this is our purpose. And that's what, and so the All Blacks did this. Cignetti's Hoosiers did this year. It was just understanding that, guys, that they even called themselves like the island of misfit toys, right? We're coming from all these different places. However, why were they successful? Because they all had the same purpose. They had a simple plan, so they had confidence in executing. They all had the same purpose going into this, knowing that, hey, we're all coming from different backgrounds, but at the same time, we have a plan that's going to win. And we believe we're going to win. And their purpose was to win it all. And they all knew that they could do that. So I'm sure there were setbacks around the year, but the All Blacks even said the players took increasing responsibility for team protocols, principles, and culture. It's not going back to what you said last episode, which is the culture revolves not so much around the coach, but around the best player. So if the player is taking ownership in the team protocols, the principles, the attitudes, the culture, what is the mental attitude of this team, right? If the best players are bought in, we're going to have a culture and we're going to win it all.
For sure.
But we need players taking responsibility. In order to have that responsibility, we need the coach and that player to be aligned on their purpose.
Absolutely. Completely agree.